Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who we haven't met during these past few days, I'm Siavash Alimadadi from Uppsala University. I'm a researcher and lecturer in international business and also project studies. Been working for the last few years with international marketing and international business in different regions in Middle East, in Turkey particularly recently. And a little bit about this presentation that we're going to have. I made it with having this EHMAC project in mind particularly. So it's a kind of a combination of, it's a mix of general information, but also quite targeted towards this project that we have with the Indoor Hygiene Alliance. So a little bit about Iran, the background. It's the second largest economy in the Middle East and North African markets after Turkey. And in terms of the surface, is the 17th largest country in the world, and with having 81 million population, is the largest after Egypt and North African countries. So it's the largest in the region, with the capital of Tehran with about 15 million population formally, but it's like it increases during the daytime and it goes down during the night. So as you can see, it is quite a large potential market, and we will talk about it that it is, even though it has been a little bit, as you mentioned, untouched or untapped yet by the Finnish SMEs, it's very much competitive when it comes to other regions in the world. Well, our project, EHMAC project with the hygiene products is very well suited for the market. As you can see, it's a highly populated, there are a lot of people, and there's a lot of possibilities or potential threat of infection spreading around. And some of the actually highlights that I think would be useful to know. First of all, it's quite easy to reach Tehran from Stockholm. There are direct flights once a week from Stockholm, once a week from Gothenburg in Stockholm. It takes around 5.5 hours direct flight to Tehran. The country is fairly young, with 60% under 30 years old, and highly educated actually workforce, especially in the area of engineering. So it's one of the main scientific highlight of the country is engineering studies, both in different levels. And as mentioned previously, also in previous slides, there's plenty of natural resources. Has the first largest natural gas resource, and I think fourth oil in terms of oil. And the location, as you see, is kind of strategically located. Is kind of bridging the east and west, and that's the whole story with the Middle East, and the whole chaos partly comes from its strategic location and the resources that it holds. I already mentioned about the population, but a little bit about the culture before we get into the more kind of a business talk. As mentioned before, the major language in the country is Persian or Farsi, even though there are a number of different languages like Azeri, Kurdish has been spoken, but this is the major formal language. It's written from right to left. So that's the first thing, that the alphabet is very similar to Arabic alphabet, even though there are some words that are different. So it's like let's say Finnish or Swedish language and English, and the structures are different with Arabic. So those are the things that probably, if you want to go to the country, you will notice fairly soon, and if you don't, Iranians remind you of that. Major religion is Islam. It's Shia, which is the largest Shia population, and despite the regime and the government is a religious government, and the formal actually government of the country practices religion, but in the social life, you have a variety of differences, and there are marginal, actually, slight margin of the population that are actually practicing the religion on a regular basis or in a public places. And the stories that you have heard before, the politicization of the religion has led to some backlashes as the religion beliefs among the younger generation. So in that terms, it's quite different from what you hear from media. So if you want to go to Iran, you have to kind of prepare yourself to be faced with something quite different with what you've heard. Also, it's kind of different from neighboring countries, both in terms of culture, in terms of language, and in terms of all the day-to-day practices, and that's also something to have in mind. There are two distinct kind of lifestyle also. That's another important thing, that Iranians usually practice two different lifestyle in public and in private. And that comes to what I mentioned earlier. And also indoor and outdoor appearances are quite different. So these are the things that might come as a shock at the beginning, but as you get used to the culture, you get used to all this routine. One of the key or core concepts in Persian culture or in Iranian culture is tarof, which is really hard to grasp actually, maybe for foreigners, at least for my friends. Maybe I forgot to mention I'm originally Iranian. It's hard to grasp because it's based on this politeness and showing humbleness. So you're always supposed to put others ahead of yourself if it is about offering something. So even if you are starving and you have only one lunchbox, you first offer it to your friends or to your guests, and that's something that they take pride on. And it's tricky because it's not supposed to be obvious. So the better it is practiced, the less obvious it gets. But this is one of those things that I've seen lots of confusion around. So that you will get used to it as you are there and you practice it. Another thing that is very important, and I think was mentioned before, is also social networks, especially when it comes to the business. Who you know plays a major part, and building up these networks based on the trust, based on like long-term perspectives are very important. So there are many market segments and potential business areas that are formed by quite exclusive business networks and social networks. And in order to kind of get into and tap into those potentials, you have to have the right network. Another cultural or business culture aspect is is bargaining, which is quite common in the whole region actually. If you have been to Turkey, for example, to Bazaar, you see that how bargaining is actually, everyone are expected to get engaged in a quite tough negotiation, and that comes from a little bit of this Bazaar type of thinking when you don't have very defined and clear sense of quality and quantity of what you are purchasing originally. So you kind of make sense of the whole situation and the other person through this negotiation, and you kind of get a feeling that are they trustworthy, or what they're claiming to sell you or what they're claiming to offer you, is it like genuine or not? So that's also something that might be quite different practice in Middle East and particularly in Iran than what we see here. As mentioned, Iran has been quite isolated at the beginning of the 2000s because of the sanctions that was imposed on the country. But since 2015, thanks to the deal that Iran had with major powers, the country opened up opened up and the sanctions were lifted. Major sanctions due to nuclear activities were lifted. And after that, we observed we had lots of delegation, especially from European countries, mainly from Germany, France, Italy, which I'll get to it in a second. Going to Iran, there are lots of foreign direct investment that have been already deals that are signed in the automobile industry, in all sort of renewable energy, etc. And Sweden, also Swedish ambassador just recently kind of hailed Iran's commitment to the deal and emphasized that Sweden keep continuing to support the deal and support the Swedish businesses in Iran. So as we heard, there are still a lot of banking hurdles due to the political situation. It's not easy it's not as easy as it is in other countries, but it's not impossible with the opening LCs and agreements with Iranian banks. It is possible to transact. The transactions are possible, and it's the intention of the government is to make it easier and easier. So they're trying to lift the obstacles and that we are observing today. And as I mentioned, at the moment, I think the total trade between European Union and Iran in 2017 stood for 21 billion, and its major countries are, I don't know why they're not showing, but it's basically these big portions are Germany, Italy, France, mainly I think Belgium also, and there are many deals have been signed, mainly in industrial areas like automobile industry. I know that France, Germany have signed deals, and they have started to build up factories and production lines in Iran. But a little bit closer to home, Sweden has a long history of doing business with Iran. Major Swedish multinationals like Ericsson, Atlas Copco, Volvo, they have been in Iran for over half a century. I know Atlas Copco was one of the companies that we were working with in Uppsala, and they started their first office in Iran around 65 years ago. The same goes for Ericsson. But after the sanctions were lifted, Business Sweden opened an office in Iran in February 2017, and the delegation led by Prime Minister of Sweden visited Iran. Agreements were signed. The same trend has been seen with Finland, even though not as significant as Sweden, but the trade has the worth of trade of goods has raised quite substantially during 2017, and we are expecting to see the same raise. And also we have had a recent agreement signed between the Scandinavian countries and Iranian industrial associations, which kind of promises to smoothen the path of trade between the countries. But a little bit more particular about our project and our with this indoor hygiene services and products and solutions that we are planning to offer and enter there. It's mainly in the construction sector, so the sector stands for something about $154 billion by the end of 2016. It's on the raise. Expect to get close to $200 billion by 2020. And there are four major kind of sectors or subsectors in the construction industry that we think at the moment we found them highly potential with the high potentials for our business. One is mainly located in Tehran, is high-end residential areas in Tehran, mainly owned and operated or operationalized by private actors. They're very powerful actors with quite well-established import and export network to the European countries. So it's a little bit maybe difficult to get inside these networks because they already are very well established. But as I mentioned earlier, with a little bit of networking and the right people, this could be a high potential for our product to be adapted to the luxury and high-end residentials. Another area that we think is highly potential is the hospitality industry. It's been estimated around 900 new hotels to be built over the next 5 years in Iran. And they are located all over, but we have these islands in the south, Kish Island, which is highly touristic, and major hotels in Tehran and other areas of the countries. But also important for us are those old premises and old hotels that have not undergone major renovation and overhauls maybe over the last 30-40 years. Basically after revolutions, there have been all these big chain hotels like Hilton and Sheraton. The maintenance has been poor. So that's also one area that I think would be very highly potential opportunity for us. The third is healthcare. Hospitals is one of those sectors that I think here in Finland is also, the alliance is very active in terms of hospitals. And Iran has 900 hospitals already in operation, which is the largest number in the Middle Eastern country. But still, relative to the population of 82 million, there is still lack of hospital beds. And the government has a plan to increase the number of beds, hence building new hospitals in the upcoming years. And that would be something quite potentially valuable for us. And the fourth one is actually public spaces and public premises. Iran, like other countries in the Middle East, is quite collective, has a collective culture, so people gather around a lot, and there are, thanks to the high number of population, it gets really crowded. If you travel with metro in Tehran, or if you have been in any major music concert, you can feel that sometimes you can hardly breathe. So it is a highly demanded or highly needed service, this indoor hygiene product in in these premises and in these public spaces. But also, I should mention that it is, at least it's my understanding from talking to colleagues back home in Iran, that it is highly competitive. The companies like from Europe and also from China, from Korea, has already signed agreements. For example, we know that Chinese and Korean companies already signed major agreements for building hospitals. So we expect that while in the market we are dealing not only with Iranian locals but also with other major contractors coming from these countries, because we expect they are preferring or favoring their own contractors. So that's also something that we have to take into account while dealing. And these are just preparing this presentation. These are some of the recent related in the same industry companies that have been entered the market recently. Bactiguard is the Swedish company active in, again, this bacterial infection, or actually fighting with bacterial infection, which held a large symposium in Iran in 2016, opened by Swedish ambassador in Iran. We have companies like Camfil, which is a air filter producer that have already started a production line in Iran. And actually, the other one is Blue Air that entered the market in 2017. So maybe we can stop sharing. So these are some of the, I'm just going to skim through them very fast, but this is some of our strategies to segment the market and actually how to enter the market. It's a huge difference between public and private sector. Public sector needs time due to the governmental rules and legislation and bureaucratic nature of it. So we're going to follow a different strategy when it's in public sector. We're going to enter by education and seminars for different associations like Iranian Society of Consulting Engineering, different governmental associations, and raise awareness about our offering and start from there. What private sector, the strategy is quite different. We're thinking of, we need to know exactly what we are offering. We have to go in strong. Otherwise, even it doesn't matter how valuable our offering is, we might be beaten by other alternatives because there are powerful actors that can bring it from other channels, other countries, much faster and much easier than what we can afford. And this is just to give you an overview of how we're thinking about packaging and marketing our products. These are three main areas that we are covering in buildings. So we are thinking of three different solutions. Some solutions are, for air, water, and surface, as the project has discussed, and these will be tailored to the specific market segments. And we are thinking about different size of buildings and there are different size of the spaces, small, medium, large, which requires different capacity of the and also different stages of production, from the design to utilization and the ones that are in operation. Old buildings or the ones that are not designed yet. As I mentioned, there is difference between public and private sectors. So these are some of the things that we are building our efforts, marketing efforts on. And another important, very important thing, and the last one is actually that you need to be present in the market with after-sales services and customer services, or you will have a very hard time selling your product or services. So they'll trust you if they know that they can reach you whenever they want. So you are there to provide after-sales services. And this is finally, we are thinking about this project. We are approaching this, we try to create and shape these new market demands in the market, and our approach is long-term approach. We want the companies to actually not to do spot selling, but while they're, even though the project is for 3 years, but we are thinking much longer term. So whichever decision that we are making or preparation is with the long-term view in mind and holistic approach, as I said. We want to have the whole package, not the spot selling, but actually building and replicating the same successful experience that we have had here in Finland, there in Iranian market, and also Saudi Arabia. And we're using the synergetic effect between our team, between the two target markets. The plan is to build a strong local relationship, target market, multiple markets market segments to start with, and also we're planning, as I mentioned, to create a unified platform so that we can lay the ground from there and build something quite sustainable over time. So thank you very much.